Welcome back to the channel, guys, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different while still diving into Commander Masters. The full slate of Mythics for the set have been revealed, and while there are still a few cards left to be spoiled that we should get tomorrow, I thought it'd be cool to take a look at all the Mythics and sort of see what their prices were before they were announced for reprint, and talk about whether or not they were good inclusions. So let's jump into the video. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. If this is the first video you're watching of mine, I have been doing a full recap of Commander Masters each day, breaking down the spoilers and kind of going through them. So if you want to check those videos out, check the other videos in this playlist. But today we're looking at the Mythics, and as far as I know, there are 35 main set Mythics. I'm not counting the Commanders from the Commander decks because while they will be in set boosters, I believe, they are not going to be in draft boosters, and so they're not part of the quote-unquote core set. We're not considering them when determining the Mythics here. You know, just for like a draft value perspective or what have you. One of the biggest criticisms that this set has gotten, of course, early on was like the lack of good reprints and bulk rares and stuff. And then now, if you look, you know, as we kind of go through, it looks like we are getting a lot of improvements on that. So yeah, I'm just going to start going through them and we will see kind of where we end up. So first off, we've got Archfiend of Despair. This is a really good card. It was very scarce. It only had one other printing in Battle Bond. And it's just extremely good in decks like Kalia, but it's also got its place in other demon-based variants in Commander. It is about $45-ish prior to the reprint, and the foil version was around $120. So, a very good value reprint, in my opinion. Both, you know, giving it a couple other foil versions now, you'll be able to pull it as a regular foil and a foil etched. So, hopefully that'll, you know, give people who don't have a foil copy a more accessible version. I don't know if this card will drop too much, though, because it is still a really good card, and it's not exactly going to be widely available, even being in the Commander Master set. But it is a very welcome reprint and a good choice from Wizards. Now, Avacyn, Angel of Hope. This is a card that people knew was going to be reprinted in here because of it being on the pack art. I talked about that in one of the spoiler videos. This is just a really good card that no matter how many times they seem to reprint it, ends up going back up in value. It was last printed in the original Double Masters a couple of years back, and the cheapest you could get it prior to this was $45 for the regular or $65 for the foil. Not terrible, but it's a really, really good card, and it's pretty pricey, so to have it get a reprint here, I don't know how much of a dent it'll really make in the price, especially because it's still a Mythic, but it might drop it down about 10 bucks. Either way, it's still another really good inclusion. A great hit here is Balefire Dragon, and it does have an amazing extended art, which I've kind of sung the praises of quite often in the videos on the channel so far. Now, it's not as expensive as some of the other ones, but $30-ish was its price and a $55 foil. It's still a very welcome reprint that has not been printed in a couple years. I think Ultimate Masters was the last time, so it's a good inclusion and certainly a good card to see at Mythic. Bribery is the first one that I'm kind of like on. This was a $15 card prior to the reprint announcement, and then the foil was about $1.30. Obviously, getting a foil variant of this is going to be a lot more affordable now, but the card itself, you know, it really was only expensive because of the scarcity of the, you know, copies of it in circulation. And pulling this as a Mythic does feel like it's going to end up being a bit of a letdown. It probably will end up being like a $5 card when all is said and done. So, you know, not exactly the biggest hit. Capture of Jingzhou is one of the rare examples of a card that just, you know, Portal 3 Kingdoms, never been reprinted. $350 is the cheapest this card's available, and there is no foil version of it right now, so it's much like Imperial Seal. I think Imperial Seal might be a better card overall because of, you know, multiple different factors and much more slotability within decks, but I don't know where this one's going to end up. It's obviously a good reprint, I mean, given the fact that it was a $300+ card, but where it'll end up price-wise, I mean, I really don't know. I don't know what the demand is going to be for this card, so hopefully it'll be, you know, more affordable-ish. I could see it taking a similar route to Imperial Seal, but then I could also see it being less, because again, I just think Imperial Seal is more generically playable in, you know, any deck that's playing black in Commander. Craterhoof Behemoth is a very, very good reprint as well. It was in Jumpstart a couple of years back, but it was still around $25. This is a good inclusion. It's not, you know, game-breaking per se. It's not like the best thing ever, but it's nice to see this, and hopefully it'll end up dropping maybe like 18 to 20. Foil version of this was 85 bucks at the cheapest before, so definitely a card that you weren't exactly going to be scooping up for nothing. Although I should note that they did have Secret Lair variants that were a little bit less, but they are a bit unique in their art style, and so if you wanted just a regular version of Craterhoof in foil, that's about the amount you were going to be shelling out. Demonic Tutor is another really good reprint, and I honestly don't think, no matter how many times they reprint this, I think this card's always going to end up having some value. But it's about $35 before the reprint and $70 for a foil. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this will end up dropping down, like Vampiric Tutor did. It's been reprinted. Strixhaven was the last time before this, I believe, so it's been a couple of years. Hopefully, this will end up falling under like 25, but I don't know. I think there may be a dip period, but I don't think it's going to end up being anything crazy. Still, this card is always going to be a welcome reprint regardless, and I don't think anyone's ever going to be upset to pull a Demonic Tutor just because it's going to either be playable or movable, and that's pretty much a win-win if you're cracking packs. Doubling Season is an insane reprint, and honestly might be the best Mythic card in the set, in my opinion, in terms of as good as it is for decks that it benefits. Any token spam strategy in Commander is really, really going to be looking forward to this card. And it was about $70 at the cheapest before this announcement and $95 for the foil. The last time it got printed was the original Double Masters, where it had a beautiful borderless version. It looks like in this set it's just going to get a regular and a foil. But still, I am fingers crossed this will end up around like 65, or not, maybe lower than 65 actually. I think it may end up at 65 long term, but I think 45.50 maybe. This probably going to hold its value pretty well, but we're really going to have to see how much Commander Masters is open and what the market allocations actually look like. Right now, it's just kind of hard to tell, but I think this is the best inclusion of Mythic. Extraplanar Lens is another really solid card. This is actually just cool for like doubling the amount of mana you get off lands and helping for ramp. It didn't have a lot of prints before being in Mirrodin, and it's $26-ish for the regular and $45 for the foil. So a solid reprint in terms of value. A little bit lower than some of the ones we've covered so far, but it's definitely welcome. And again, this has a really nice alternate style art as well, which should have demand from players. So hopefully more people chase after the alternate and the Mythic will fall down in price, but not everything can stay super expensive. So something will have to give. We'll have to see kind of where that all falls into place. Brave Pact is a card that has not been reprinted for a long time, but it is very, very good, and was around $28 for its normal version and $100 for its foil. I believe it only had one foil printing. I could be wrong on that. Someone can correct me if so, but when I looked into this prior, I believe it was only one, and it was an older set. I think it might have been Masks of Arcadia, but I don't know, Arcadian Masks, but I don't know if that's right. Someone can tell me in the comments, but I know either way, the foil printing at the cheapest was $100, so hopefully you'll be able to get a copy of this foil for a lot less than that. And I definitely think this one should probably drop about $10-ish with a reprint, so that's always good to see if you want to get your hands on these cards. Now, Heliod Suncrown, people were wanting a reprint for this for a while. He's on the lower end in value. He was about $20 or $22 for the foil, so not impossible to get. It's not really breaking a budget necessarily, but $20 can still be a lot for a card that's like, going to be an inclusion in a deck versus like a deck you're building around. So I can understand the desire in wanting to make this more accessible, and I think he's playable in other formats as well. So, a kind of a nice reprint across the board. You're going to have those kind of mid-range reprints, and he'll probably still be, around $10. So it's not like it all is lost. But a decent reprint nonetheless. Insurrection is kind of okay. I'm not super sold on this one as a Mythic. I mean, it's a decent card, a good game finisher. It was about $12 before the reprint announcement. The foil was like 70 plus, and that one, obviously it's nice that there's going to be a foil variant of this coming down and being a bit more accessible, but I don't know. I'm not really sold on this. I definitely don't think it's the type of Mythic that you want to pull, but it's still a decent inclusion. Jeweled Lotus, I've talked about ad nauseum. This is an incredible reprint, and if Doubling Season isn't the best reprint in here, this definitely is. $70 prior to the reprint, and $90 for a foil. Of course, it has other variants and stuff. I don't think this is going to drop all that much. I think it might drop to like 50, maybe. But given its incredible nature and just how good it really is in Commander in general, is just absolutely wild. So you should really, this is going to be a good card, and there might be a bottom out period for a bit, but I don't think it's going to be anything super crazy. Kozilek, again, not the best, but I get the thematic reason to include it. It's about $10 for a normal version of this, or $30 for a foil. It's got the borderless treatment, which is very questionable looking from an art perspective. I'm not a fan at all. But he should be really cheap now. Like, he should probably fall to like $6 or $7. So decent, I guess, to make another Eldrazi more accessible. I honestly would have liked to see this one just included in the deck because it was already cheap enough that it might have been a decent value in there. But I guess they wouldn't have had the excuse borderless if they went that way. Land Tax is another really good one. It was about $30 and then $48 for the foil before its reprint. This card's just very, very good. And honestly, especially in pods, is just really, really powerful in Commander. So a good reprint and another card that, like, despite its reprints, doesn't typically end up dropping all that much. But as a Mythic, it has actually been upshifted from Rare. So it's interesting to see what, what the value of this will look like and whether or not it'll actually make much of a dip being harder to crack. Loyal Retainers is a great reprint, 65 for the normal version and 60 for a foil. The only foil was a Judge promo, so technically it's not even a real foil in that regard, but I mean, it still counts. This is a good value reprint that when this card came out was an uncommon, and it just wasn't that great because there weren't a lot of legendary creatures. Now, obviously, it's really, really good, and it's going to be a card people want to get their hands on, hopefully at a lesser price. I do think it'll end up dropping. Whether or not it drops significantly remains to be seen. Micaeus the Unhallowed, not the most necessary reprint in the sense that like the value wasn't crazy high, about 20 for a normal version and 45 for a foil, but this card has some insanely cool profile artwork, and zombies are really popular in Commander, so this card is obviously going to be one that players want to get their hands on. I think this does have a textured foil as well. I don't know, we haven't actually seen it yet to like know what it looks like in person, but still a very good reprint, and you know, just a nice inclusion here. $20 card, we're really never going to complain about that being something you can pull. Neheb the Eternal, I'm a big fan of this card. I actually, like I said, I've been working on a Minotaur tribal deck that I'll actually post for at some point. People have asked me if I'm going to post it. I want to. I'm just working on some things, but Neheb is really good in that and other red strategies. $25 for the normal and $45 for the foil before this. The reprint has him down to like 13, 14 already on TCG Player. But in terms of it being a good candidate for reprint, I would say absolutely. You know, there weren't too many cards in its set that like were really high priced, so nice to see that they kind of put him here, and he's going to be a welcome addition to people's collection. Omnath, Locus of Mana, again, it's okay. It's about 10 bucks-ish, or 30 for the foil, so it wasn't expensive, but it was, I mean, I guess it was still more than, like, a bulk mythic, so at least there's that. It's a good card, and I'm sure there are people who are going to be happy to have it, but, yeah, he's a neat card, and, again, not every mythic's going to be a home run, that's just kind of the nature of it, but, you know, here he is. Perforos, God of the Forge, a really, really good card. Again, and I've said that a lot. This is 21 for the regular, 35 for the foil. Similar to Heliod, like, not crazy expensive, but definitely not within the range of, like, budget-friendly from, like, an accessibility standpoint. And so this is a good reprint. I know people have wanted this, and hopefully being able to get it in foil will be a little bit easier now with that. Razaket the Foul-Blooded is another one that's pretty good from Hour of Devastation. This is a $20 regular and a $36 foil. Only has one print. Definitely nice to see it. I would have liked it to actually get reprinted at rare, but I think being a tutor and stuff and just being generally a really good card, they probably just wanted to make it harder to pull, especially for draft formats. So very good inclusion. Not super pricey, but it doesn't have really any other prints, and it's just a really powerful card. So there's that. Savage Beating is another decent one. That's a $20 card. That was a $68 foil. It's really good for red and can definitely be a bit of a game finisher, so it's nice to see it included. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds is really good. Now, this card, I will be a bit of a hypocrite because it is on the lower end, but no matter how many times they reprint it, it ends up going back up in value. So $15 was its average price before the reprint announcement, but the only foil version of it was around $280 from Conspiracy. So it's absolutely really, really a good reprint for that slot. Being able to get it as a foil was going to be an absolute nightmare before, unless you wanted to shell out the expensive, you know, $300. So it's a very welcome reprint, and it's just a really good card in general. I'm happy about this one simply because, you know, the popularity of green and the fact that this is getting a more accessible foil, it's just going to be kind of a win-win. Smothering Tithe, a little upset they bumped this up to a mythic, but I guess it's more of a draft format thing. Maybe they just don't want people to pull it as much, or they're trying to preserve the value. I don't know. But it was about 20 bucks-ish normal. It was reprinted last year in Double Masters 22. It dropped and then, you know, kind of started to steadily go back up. $28 for the foil. Not a big divide between those two, but still, you know, pretty good card, pretty welcome reprint. It's always going to be a good card as long as it's legal in Commander, so it's good to see it. Spellseeker was one from Battle Bond, I believe, and this is a really, really good card that allows you to search for Soul Ring, basically, or Mana Crypt or whatever. Just because it only had the one print, there was a $20 version and a $58 foil. That was a big price increase, obviously, for the premium version, but now it's getting a full art as well as a foil and a foil etched and a regular, so it should drop in price. I think this will be one of the ones that does end up falling down a bit, like I said, because something has to give on that. So, yeah, a good inclusion, good reprint, not a terrible mythic to pull, but it's not really going to be one of the chases, I don't think. Sun Quan, Lord of Wu, is just neat because of the horsemanship tie-in. I do wonder when they reveal the commons and uncommons if there will be any like other horsemanship cards in there, maybe. We'll have to wait and see. But this was around $125 for its normal version and $65 for its foil version. The foil version that it had was also a Judge promo. That's the only other like variant that there was. This was a portal card. Makes sense that they upshifted it. It was pretty pricey. Horsemanship's kind of goofy, but it's nice to see this card get a reprint, and obviously, I do think this one's not going to be anywhere near 125. This is probably going to end up dropping a pretty significant amount. I truly wouldn't be shocked if this was like a $25, $30 card when all was said and done, if not less, so we'll have to see. The Great Henge, happy to see a double dip on this. 52 for the foil, 67. Sorry, 52 for the normal, 67 for the foil. After being a box topper in Lord of the Rings, the price dropped a bit, but that's about what it's at now. It should drop a bit more after another reprint, but again, it's still a mythic, so who knows how much. This is just one of the best green artifacts in general in Commander, and I think it's absolutely going to be something you're going to want to see people going after. It doesn't look like it has a full art or anything, but it does have, you know, the party tree version from Lord of the Rings, and its original full art, which is still a pretty hotly desired item. The Immortal Sun has never been reprinted, so pretty happy to see that here. $23 for the regular or $40 for the foil. Good inclusion, good reprint. Not much else to say here, but obviously seeing this more accessible is good. Arab God was reprinted in Double Masters, and they brought him back here, so it's been a couple of years. $20 normal, $37 for the foil. Decent enough. He's got a couple of variants, Masterpiece series, but always good to see him more accessible. It's a popular card, it's a good card, and there are no real complaints there. The Dragon is huge and absolutely really powerful reprint here. It doesn't look like Edgar Markov is in here unless they make him a rare, which is a bit disappointing. I thought thematically they'd put those two together, but they did not. He did not have a foil version per se. There was a secret lair, but no like inset foil or anything. $65 for the just regular Commander deck version of him, which may have even been a foil, quote unquote, but I mean, he didn't have a pack layout, so the only version of him you could really buy that was just a standard version was about 65 bucks. So obviously he should drop here. He does have a borderless version and a foil etch and a few other things, but this is just one of the best cards in Commander in general, one of the most popular commanders. So everyone, you know, this is a win in my book. Twilight Prophet, I talked about this one a while during the reveals. $11 regular, $28 for the foil. Decent card. It definitely has its place in certain decks. It's not going to be the most expensive mythic to pull, but it's still a solid-ish inclusion, and at least it's, again, not bulk price. Finale of Devastation is great. 40 bucks or 75 for the foil was what this was going with. It was getting up there in price, and it is definitely a needed reprint. There are so many decks that can play this, and it's just really powerful, so it's good to see it here. Hopefully it drops. I don't know how much it will, but it definitely could take a bit of a dip as another printing is put into circulation. Horophon the Boundless was $20 and $45 for the foil, so about double the price for the premium version. This is just a popular commander because of his color and changeling ability. So, you know, people getting access to this after it was in Modern Horizons, I think you're going to see this card be pretty highly demanded. Where he ends up price-wise, we'll have to wait and see. Urza, not the best mythic, honestly. It was $15 for the foil or regular variant out of Dominaria Remastered. They reprinted it earlier this year. It's not bad to see it get another reprint. I don't think this is going to hold water all that much, no pun intended, because it's just kind of a reprint really soon, and it's not going to be one of the more desired mythics. And obviously there's, you know, estimated value pulled. People are going to make back their value, so it'll probably be lower end, but it's an okay-ish card. At least it's still 15 bucks, so it's not horrible. And finally, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. This is a really good one. It doesn't look like we're getting Emrakul in the main set, which is obviously a little disappointing. But Ulamog was about 35 bucks or 105 for his foil. Pretty significant, decent inclusion here, and just a really good card. And it's in Eldrazi, so it ties in with the Commander deck and stuff. Just a lot of reasons to be, you know, optimistic about that card's inclusion. So it's a pretty good mythic. So overall, taking a look at these mythics, and there's really only like 4 or 5 that I would consider like dud mythics from a, if you pull this, you're not going to be really happy perspective. And then the rest of them are pretty freaking good in one way or another. And they've shown that they will, kind of retain their value over time. And they're in-demand playable cards. So I think the mythic slot in this set is really, really good. But, you know, that just gives you a sense of, like, the prices, where they pulled from and everything. Obviously, you know, the prices of this set are still pretty expensive, but we'll wait and see what things look like after the release date happens and whether or not more start to flood the market and things start to become more affordable. But I think overall, you've got a good chance of pulling some pretty good mythics in here, so it's something to look forward to. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the mythics in this set. Check back tomorrow. We will continue and hopefully wrap up any missing spoilers before diving into the Commander deck coverage. So let me know in the comments of that. Be sure to like the video and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.